he had the ability to call out any of these team principles. And hopefully that doesn't sound disrespectful, because of course I've got massive respect for those team principles. But Eddie had an ability to look any one of them in the eye, point his finger, and challenge them in a way that they couldn't sort of just walk off, where if anyone else tried to do that, they probably could, if they felt overly challenged or they felt that, whatever, another TV guy, they could just walk away, because they knew he'd been there and done that. And he'd been there and done that in a way that I don't believe any of the team principals today have. Possibly the closest to having run their own operation is Christian Horner. Am I missing someone else? Toto has come in at a very high level, supreme businessman, and come in.
You're right, mate.
HWA,
name above the door.
Williams. Yeah,
you're right. Name above the door is very different. As you know, we come here with 11 people to the UK to set up a racing team, and to win a Grand Prix or win Grand Prix. 1-2 Spa was obviously, which we know was a big highlight, but, Frentzen in 99, that was a very competitive car. You've got to find engines, mate. You've got to find people, personnel. But against all the odds, but his name was above the door. It was Jordan Grand Prix. And you're right, that's why he had the nuts. He had the nuts to make the big decisions, and he could walk the walk. He had the swagger because he'd been in the trenches in proper times, understanding what the business entailed to get stuff done. And that's why he had, and I had massive admiration for him because of the kahunas that he showed to get that done.
Yeah. So in that respect, then, when you say there won't be another, you're absolutely right. There won't be another, which makes this world obviously not such a full place. How do we celebrate the legacy of a man like that going forward? I think for Formula One to take a moment out with all the team principals, all the drivers, that's in a very highly structured Grand Prix weekend. It's not easy for them to pull that together, but they pulled it together because of the respect they had for him. Sadly, people are born and die every day, but we're not stopping to celebrate the others. There might be a reference to it within a team, but he definitely was so much more than just one individual.
Yeah. Absolutely, mate. Yeah, I think because he touched so many families. He look where Aston Martin is now. That's where Eddie's workshop started. He started Formula 3. He started, that was the grass, the small shoots that he put up as his establishment in his organisation and company. So I think that having Aston Martin there now, which obviously is the facilities and company there is obviously probably 10-fold, 15-fold what EJ had, because that's what he needed to do at that specific time. But I think that his legacy into our sport through, he'd been in the cockpit, mate, too, and that's where we glued to him. We glued to him in another layer, which was really unique because he could call bullshit from on us in the car, or drivers, or situations where if you needed a clip around the ear, I never drove for Eddie, but I'd imagine that would be something that the drivers would always know, where there's clear boundaries, that he knew where the driver was, performing or not performing, or conditions or engineering and things like that. So there was this melting pot of information that he just had more strings in his bow to have good, so I suppose commentary around that for the driver. So those things was important because the drivers had respect for him on that side. And then, let alone look at his sponsorship. He had to get the sponsors in himself. He had to get like now we've got specialised sponsorship teams. We've got HR departments. We've got all, like EJ, my God, it would have been a lean, mean fighting machine. He would have been in all those meetings, startup mentality, getting that done. That's why the respect is still there, because there's a lot of people still in our sport, mate, to this day where he touched their lives. And that's why the respect is so high that it is all these years later, even though he wasn't involved in the sport right at the end. But, he was obviously on the big podcast here, mate, and things and commentary, etc. But, in the bows of the ship running a team, he was not there anymore, we know.
Yeah, you said that you'd never actually driven for him likewise, but we often joke that when I was in Formula 3, I met with him and his lawyer at the time, Fred Rogers. and he offered me a contract for Formula 3000 where I had to. It was a classic EJ entice you in. I had to find half the budget, which was probably about, I don't know, 300 grand or something back in those days.
Yeah.
A lot of money. But he then was on the back of it, was offering a 3-year contract in Formula One where I was going to be paid, all these ridiculous amounts of money. And it was the classic thing where he was only worried about getting the money in for year one, and then he would worry about whether he'd actually ever, if you got through it, whether he'd have to pay you. So he was the master negotiator. And in the end, I didn't go down that route, and always jokes, I managed to get away with it. But there's a lot of guys that he helped create success for. Our buddy Martin Brundle, went head to head with Senna in the championship in Formula 3. Jean Alesi won the championship. Johnny Herbert, a number of different guys before he got to Formula One. And he loved young talent. And he was Oscar Piastri, who you work with, just fantastically won in Shanghai. When he was just in the cusp of coming in, he was a big champion of young talent like that and believing in them, which is quite interesting, isn't it? That he would joke that it was because they were cheap. But the reality is, I think he was always looking for that bright bulb, looking for that star, the buzz of finding the next big star.
Yeah, that's right, mate. And you're right. He loved Oscar. He always just endless messages, which I'll keep forever, about Oscar coming in and doing what he's doing. And I think even, as you said, mate, he was looking after you, whatever way it was on that hill in New Zealand. He was looking after you, and then a few days later, Oscar won in Shanghai. And I think that he would have enjoyed that victory as well because he was a big fan of Oscar. But I think he loved the enthusiasm with the youngsters, mate. He wanted the enthusiasm and passion and the rawness. Yes, he had Damon Hill, friends, and he had some older established guys when he needed them, of course, to steady the ship in his Grand Prix team. But I think that his heart was still in giving people a crack, because he could relate to that, couldn't he? He could really relate to, actually, that was his journey. That's how he got through, was backing himself and not playing people on their reputations. He believed in himself. Remember that old believe line? Believe, believe. Yeah. If you don't believe in yourself, you're fucked. So that's what the youngsters saw in him. And bizarrely, mate, for me, like I was out of a drive in '99. I had nothing. The sports car situation, Mercedes was, I was paid 50,000 German Deutschmarks a year, whatever, was driving for them. And we had a lot of issues in Le Mans that year. And unemployed, unwanted. I was just ringing Giselle, his PA at the time, and Giselle was an awesome Rottweiler PA, not putting me through, and I just couldn't get through. And I said, stuff this, I'm going to follow EJ from the factory. I'm going to follow him in his car. And I followed him to a petrol station. And I just said, Eddie, I just love a chance, even just a straight line test, or I just want a chance to do something with you guys if I can. And I think that he saw, again, just that hunger and desire, at least, of course, not the most skillful in the world, but he saw I was prepared to have a crack. And I
Did
think
he make you pay for the petrol?
Yeah. No, he didn't, mate. I was only Aussie dollars, mate. It was 33p to the dollar, mate, back then, so I'd never pot to piss him. But but he introduced me to Paul Stoddart, and Stoddy did that. It's like, mate, I think you need to meet Paul. He took me over to Silverstone, a week later, hooked up with Stoddy, and then the rest is history, So he did give me he gave me a path out. Eddie gave me a path out of that. I was in it was a hopeless situation, hopeless. And he gave me a little light at the end of the tunnel. And I've told him several times. I was forever, Anne and I were forever grateful for that, because he gave us a chance.
Yeah. Well, another thing that you've gone on to work with Eddie on and giving people a chance is a charity that I've been along to a few of the evenings, fundraising to help those that have, for whatever circumstance, for whatever reason, have found themselves, without hope and without a home. So it'd be great if you could just share a little bit about that, because it's something that, EJ really put his back behind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Amber Rocks. It's been around for a good while, mate, and I think he just saw this opportunity where if he can set up accommodation, in certain places in the UK and have them, get them off the streets, give them a warm bed, give them some 3 square meals, but also give them a chance to introduce some structure in their life And he was, again, pioneering that with putting the right people in place, the right facilities, making sure they could purchase the right sort of homes and old estates. These places were not flash by any means, mate, but they were a huge step up for these people to go and have that second or third chance in their life, whether it was, coming from big, bad addictions, some abuse at home, been on the streets for a long time. I've been to these accommodations and seen these kids firsthand. I've spent time there. And again, it's changed, completely life-changing. And I think that Eddie, he just, again, had that vision to go, okay, this is the opportunity here. Why can't we get these youngsters, and it's also from 15 to a young kid, 15 to could be 25, 30. It's not like, it's quite a wide age bracket. And man, I left there inspired. I left there just going like, this is another, Eddie's just had this opportunity, and found the right people to get the funding, millions and millions and millions of pounds to put back into these people and get them back on their feet. And that's something with that Amber Rocks that they've done. And I remember some of the functions they've done. Again, mate, just absolute chaos. We're going up on stage together, mate. So you're going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about that. Right? I said, Eddie, I've got no brief, mate. What are we talking about? No, just go with whatever we're going to go with. I said, I need something, mate. So you get up there and he's got it all upside down and he's up, So, but that's what people, that was the character they loved about it. And then when you have the young people talk on the night and then breaking down and crying, and knowing that he had been pioneering and or sort of he was the segue for them to believe in themselves to do that. So touching and so special that he did that. He's a unique man.